A very good day, everyone. This is Dr. Haripriya, an anesthesiologist by profession and presently working as a ECLS coordinator in Jeeva Raksha. In this chapter, today we will be learning about COVID and comorbidities. Man is prone to different comorbidities like diabetes, hypertension, COPD and asthma, CVA, ischemic heart disease, chronic kidney disease, obesity, and low immunity. All these comorbidities increase the severity of illness due to COVID. Diabetes and COVID. In diabetes, there is impaired neutrophil chemotaxis, impaired phagocytosis, and defective cell-mediated immunity, which increases the risk of COVID infection. How do you manage diabetes in COVID? If it's an outpatient care, then continue oral hypoglycemic agents with mild COVID-19 infection. And if the patient has moderate or severe COVID-19 infection, then please shift him to intensive care unit and change the oral hypoglycemic agents to insulin. If in case the levels of blood glucose is more than 180 milligram per dl persistently, or there is any presence of sepsis, then insulin infusion should be started at a dose of 0.1 international unit per kg per hour. And monitor blood glucose level every 2 to 4 hours. And target glucose level should be 140 to 180 milligram per dl. Coming to hypertension in COVID, our target blood pressure should be systolic of 125 to 140 millimeters of mercury and diastolic below 85 millimeters of mercury. And the antihypertensives of choice is thiazide type diuretics or long-acting calcium channel blockers. If patient is already taking ACE inhibitors or ARBs, then you can continue using it as they have anti-inflammatory properties and reduce the risk of acute lung injury. But in case the patient has any features of renal failure, please withhold it. You can continue statins and aspirin as the patient was already taking. Broadly, to categorize hypertension in COVID, that is blood pressure more than 140 by 90, it is hypertension without chronic kidney disease and hypertension with chronic kidney disease. This categorization is mainly to choose the antihypertensive of choice, and for patients without chronic kidney disease, the antihypertensives of choice will be thiazide type diuretic or ACE inhibitors or ARB or calcium channel blockers. Any of these can be chosen. If in case the patient has a chronic kidney disease, then ACE inhibitor or ARB alone should be used or in combination with other classes of drugs. And the target blood pressure which we are aiming at is, if the patient is less than 60 years of age, it is 140 by 90 millimeters of mercury, and if he is more than 60 years of age, it is less than 150 by 90 mmHg. So what if the blood pressure is not coming under control? First thing we have to do is to maximize the first drug before even starting the second drug. And in spite of maximizing the dose, if the blood pressure is not coming under control, then a second drug can be added. Make sure that you titrate both up to a maximum dose and monitor the blood pressure and make sure it is under control. In case the blood pressure does not come under control even after this, then you have to start two drugs separately or in a fixed dose combination and titrate both up to a maximum dosage if needed. What about COPD and COVID? COPD patients can be divided into COPD who are not infected with COVID, who have mild COVID, who have moderate COVID with dyspnea and infiltrates, and who have severe COVID with acute respiratory distress syndrome. Also, another category where patients are COVID positive and they have recovered from COVID and continue to be having COPD. So in patients with COPD but not infected, normal routine home exercises and protective strategies will continue. With mild COVID-19 infection, that is with mild constitutional symptoms, fever, increased shortness of breath, and dry cough, fatigue and diarrhea, Protective strategies, COPD exacerbation therapy and low intensity exercises should be followed. With patients with moderate COPD or moderate COVID-19 infection who have breathlessness and infiltrates will present with increased severity of breathlessness and with or without hypoxia. Their PaO2 FiO2 ratio can be less than 300 millimeters of mercury. These patients will have changes in chest X-ray or CT, their saturation is low. They'll have lymphopenia, thrombocytopenia, and the transaminase level D-dimer will all be increased. So in these patients, we have to start them on controlled oxygen therapy, systemic steroids, remdesivir, and anticoagulation therapy. What about patients with severe COVID or severe acute respiratory distress syndrome? So they are candidates who can go into shock, cardiac failure or thrombosis. In these patients, there will be severe decrease in saturation, CRP, LDH, interleukin-6, D-dimer, ferritin, troponin can all be increased. So they have to be started on non-invasive ventilation, high flow nasal oxygen or intermittent mandatory ventilation, and prone position should be followed, and as usual anticoagulation for thrombosis. These present patients are followed up in the hospital. When patients have recovered from COVID and have been discharged, that is convalescent COVID patients can continue to have fatigue, shortness of breath and cough. So they have to continue home exercises and pulmonary rehabilitation therapy. Thrombosis in COVID. So what are the risk factors for thrombosis? The age, more than 60 years, patients who are dehydrated, who have active cancer, body mass index of more than 30, who had previous history of thrombotic disease, patients on estrogen therapy, recent surgeries and with reduced mobility. All these patients are having increased risk factors for thrombosis, and early anticoagulation will prevent the propagation of microthrombi and will save their life. So let's see if there is a need for anticoagulation therapy. If yes, what is the severity of COVID? Mild COVID or moderate or severe COVID? If it is mild COVID-19 infection, continue anticoagulation and consider low molecular weight heparin if the INR is unstable or it's difficult to monitor INR. And if the patient has moderate or severe COVID, and please assess if the patient is unstable or has any drug interactions. If the patient is stable with no drug interaction, the anticoagulation will continue. But if he has any drug interactions or he is unstable, then the patient should be switched to low molecular weight heparin or unfractionated heparin. Here, consider dose reduction or drug discontinuation after individual evaluation of baseline characteristics, that is weight, bleeding and thrombotic risk. So what if there is no need for anticoagulation therapy? Assess if there is need for dual antiplatelet therapy, that is whether the patient already has had acute coronary syndrome or MI. If so, 25,000 to 50,000 platelets, then single antiplatelet therapy. Less than 25,000, then stop antiplatelet therapy. And also assess the COVID-19 severity. Mild COVID, encourage increased mobility and pharmacological prophylaxis if there is an increased risk of thrombosis. Moderate to severe COVID, if the assess for thrombosis risk, pharmacological prophylaxis or intermittent pneumatic compression can be done, or if the patient is prone for DIC, prophylactic anticoagulation can be followed. Coming to CKD in COVID, that is chronic kidney disease and COVID. Patients with chronic kidney disease are at high risk to acquire COVID-19 illness because they are immunocompromised. They have significant morbidity and mortality, and the respiratory signs and symptoms of CKD may overlap with COVID-19 like tachypnea, hypoxia, bilateral crepitations in the lung fields or auscultation due to either it may be fluid overload or metabolic acidosis. These patients should be quickly assessed and noted whether they are stable or unstable. If they are stable, we have to continue their regular medications, including ACE inhibitors. Regular consultation should be encouraged with a general physician or a nephrologist. And wherever possible, to use telemedicine and avoid frequent hospital visits unless urgent or emergent, to keep themselves safe from COVID-19 infection and unnecessary exposure to the infection. If the patient is unstable, never keep them at home. Please admit the patients to ICU, reassess the need for urgent or emergent requirement of renal replacement therapy, and you have to do blood investigations like renal function tests, serum electrolytes, ABG, and prompt and safe referral to a unit where facilities for renal replacement therapy and ICUs are available. So, in patients who are unstable, in case of life-threatening metabolic acidosis and hyperkalemia, which is very common with chronic kidney disease patients, injection calcium gluconate should be administered, that is 10%, 10 ml over 10 minutes, and regular insulin of 0.1 to 1.5 units per kg in 25% dextrose, 100 ml IV. An injection sodium bicarbonate, that is 100 to 150 milliequivalents IV over 10 to 15 minutes through a central line. And whenever we give sodium bicarbonate, we have to be cautious about fluid overload, pulmonary edema and cerebral edema. And whenever required, renal replacement therapy, and avoid unprecedented IV fluid administration because these patients can easily go into a fluid overload state. Coming to immunosuppression and COVID, patients on steroids are considered as immunosuppressed. So it is a dose-dependent relationship. Low-dose steroids will not do any harm and can be continued, but if they are on high-dose steroids, they have to be regularly monitored with increased risk of mucormycosis these days. And oncological patients have increased risk of infection because they are immunocompromised and are susceptible to any infection. Patients on immunosuppressants also have an increased risk of infection, and surprisingly, HIV and AIDS patients who are considered to be immunocompromised have shown no increased risk in COVID-19 era. So, coming to pregnancy and COVID, there is no evidence on transplacental transmission of COVID till now, and the severity of disease may be aggravated by other comorbidities in pregnancy. Treatment is almost similar to all other patients, and admission to a designated COVID healthcare center 2 weeks before expected date of delivery is very important to have a safe and confined delivery. So what are the indications for critical care? Tachypnea, that is respiratory rate of more than 30 per minute, hypoxia, saturation less than 93%, and more than 50% of lung involvement on ultrasonography. Please remember, it is ultrasonography, not X-ray and not CT. Coming to COVID and mental illness, WHO definition of health says physical, mental and social well-being of a person is important, and it's not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. The population who are generally affected with a mental illness are general population. Whoever is there can be anytime affected with any mental illness. People in isolation, family members of patient and COVID-19 patients are more susceptible to mental illness because they go through a lot of trauma during the time of detection till the patient is discharged, or if there is a sad demise of any of the family members. The special population here being healthcare workers, frontline workers and vulnerable population. So healthcare workers would see a lot of patients day in and day out and would have witnessed a huge amount of deaths in front of their eyes, and long duration of hours are mentally straining the patients and pushing them into burnouts. Frontline workers as usual are on their toes with every single duty they are doing, and vulnerable population like the elderly population and pediatric are going through a lot of difficult times during COVID, with family members being detected as positive, they have to get isolated and whatnot. What are the clinical manifestations of COVID? It can be delirium, anxiety disorder, depression, substance abuse disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder and psychosis. Among these, delirium ranks first. Management of COVID-19 and mental illness. Broadly categorized into non-pharmacological management and pharmacological management. Non-pharmacological management includes behavioral therapy, that is, encouraging them to have good sleep, regular exercise and healthy diet. And coping with the situation is through information pruning, spiritual coping and active coping. Pharmacological therapy is where for them to have a good sleep, lorazepam can be given or SSRIs like escitalopram can be prescribed to the patients, and antipsychotics like olanzapine and risperidone can be used. Injectable haloperidol can be used but encouraged at the hospital setting, not at home. And patients with delirium, we have to give them haloperidol and better to avoid benzodiazepine in this situation. Coming to a very important topic, rhino-orbital cerebral mucormycosis. As the name sounds and it's heavy, mucormycosis has actually scared a lot of people. So treat, that is to recognize early and aggressively treat mucor should be followed. Risk factors to acquire mucormycosis is uncontrollable diabetes mellitus, treated with COVID-19 with corticosteroids, and treated with immunomodulators, and prolonged mechanical ventilation and long standing. Investigations in mucormycosis are complete blood count, FBS, PPBS and HbA1c to see whether the patient is diabetic or to follow up on the blood glucose levels, renal function test, and deep nasal swab for gram KOH mount and fungal media. So here we have to grow the fungus and see whether it is really mucormycosis, but usually it does not give us so much time. And diagnostic nasal endoscopy can be done, MRI orbit, paranasal sinuses and brain with contrast, and CT paranasal sinuses. A broad medical management guidelines say induction phase with liposomal amphotericin 5 to 10 mg per kg per day for 2 weeks, or a dual therapy with liposomal amphotericin plus oral posaconazole 300 mg PD for day 1 and then 300 mg OD for 2 weeks. This is followed by oral posaconazole 300 mg BD for another further 2 to 4 weeks till clinical resolution and radiological stabilization is noted in the patient. Surgical management guidelines say early surgical debridement of sinuses in all patients is advised. Transcutaneous retrobulbar amphotericin 1 ml of 3.5 mg per ml only in selected cases, and orbital exentration in patients with extensive orbital involvement. So with this, we are here coming to an end of COVID and comorbidities section of our COVID crash course. Hope you enjoyed this bit. Thank you so much.